She kept both our toothbrushes next to his. There are things you forgive without meaning to, simply because the cost of knowing the truth arrives too late to matter. The toothbrush was pale green, the cheap plastic kind you buy in a 2-pack at a grocery store checkout. It sat in the ceramic cup beside the sink, angled slightly away from mine, as if trying not to intrude. I noticed it on a Wednesday evening while washing my face, the bathroom lit only by the small lamp we kept on the counter because the overhead made my eyes ache. The toothbrush hadn't been there that morning. I was certain of this in the way you're certain about the position of your own hands. Marcus was in the living room, his laptop balanced on his thighs, the blue glow illuminating his face the way it did most nights. He'd been working late all month. Something about a product launch. Deadlines that kept expanding like water damage across a ceiling. I stood in the doorway holding the toothbrush, feeling the weight of it against my palm, feeling stupid for holding it at all. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. Before that Wednesday, our life together existed inside a rhythm so predictable it felt like safety. We'd been together 4 years, living in the apartment for 2 of them. It was a small place, 3rd floor, with windows that faced west and caught the sunset if you happened to be looking. Marcus worked in marketing. I taught middle school English. We were the kind of couple people described as solid, meaning unremarkable, meaning stable, meaning boring in the ways that supposedly matter. Our mornings followed the same choreography. Alarm at 6:15, shower rotation, coffee brewed by whoever finished first. He liked his black. I needed milk, and exactly 1 sugar. We'd stopped kissing goodbye sometime around year 3, replaced it with a hand on the shoulder, a "have a good day" spoken while looking at phones. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like evolution. Marcus talked about his ex-girlfriend sometimes. Her name was Simone. They dated for 2 years before me, ended things mutually when she moved to Portland for a job. He said they'd stayed friends, occasional texts, yearly birthday messages, the kind of low-frequency contact that suggested maturity rather than lingering attachment. I'd even met her once, briefly, when she visited the city for a conference. She was tall, dark-haired, warmer than I expected. We had coffee, the 3 of us, in a cafe with exposed brick and uncomfortable chairs. She asked about my students. I asked about Portland. Marcus seemed relaxed, laughing easily, his hand finding mine across the table. After she left, I remember him saying, "I'm glad you 2 met. I wanted you to see that she's just a person, not some ghost." I'd felt relieved, grateful even, that he was transparent, that he didn't make me feel small for wondering. In October, she moved back. Portland hadn't worked out. The job, the city, something unspecified that Marcus mentioned casually over dinner. "Simone's coming back to town," he said, reaching for the salt. "Looking for a place, actually. Might crash with friends for a bit." I nodded, cut into my chicken. "That's tough." "Yeah, but she's resilient." He smiled, the way you smile at someone's good qualities when they're not in the room. "She'll be fine." She started appearing in conversation more frequently after that. Small mentions, never the main topic. She'd texted him a funny meme. She'd asked his opinion about neighborhood recommendations. She was thinking about going back to grad school. Each reference felt innocent, the kind of thing friends share. I noticed only because I've always been someone who counts. Students, graded essays, how many times someone says sorry in a single conversation. It's a teacher's habit. Pattern recognition. By November, Marcus was working late more often. Sometimes he'd text around 7. "Still at the office? Don't wait up." He'd come home after 9, tired, smelling like coffee and the peculiar staleness of conference rooms. He'd kiss my forehead, ask about my day while microwaving leftovers, then retreat to his laptop with a whispered, "Just need to wrap up a few things." I didn't know then that I'd start sleeping on my side of the bed differently, more carefully, as if taking up less space might make room for him to return to me. The first crack arrived 2 weeks before the toothbrush, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. I'd been grading essays on the couch when Marcus's phone buzzed on the coffee table. He was in the shower, the screen lit up with a text preview. "Simone, can you grab—" The message cut off there. I looked at it the way you look at a bird that's flown into a window, registering its presence without understanding what it meant. When Marcus came out, towel around his waist, I said, "Your phone went off." He picked it up, glanced at the screen, typed a quick response. "Thanks." "Simone?" I kept my voice light. Yeah, she's asking if I can grab coffee before her interview tomorrow. Moral support type thing. He smiled, disappeared into the bedroom to dress. I returned to the essay I'd been grading, but the words looked different now. Not wrong exactly, but arranged in a way that made me reread the same paragraph 3 times before I understood what the student was trying to say. The next morning, Marcus left earlier than usual. When I asked where he was going, he paused in the doorway, keys already in hand. Coffee with Simone, remember? The interview thing. Right. I'd forgotten, or hadn't fully registered it. Good luck to her. He came back 2 hours later, which seemed long for coffee before an interview. But time is elastic when you're not paying attention. It only snaps into focus afterward, when you replay the morning and realize 2 hours could contain anything at all. I started noticing his phone habits, how he'd place it face down on surfaces, how he'd take it with him to the bathroom, to the bedroom, to the kitchen for a glass of water, how he'd tilt the screen slightly away when typing, a motion so subtle it looked like accident rather than intention. One evening, I asked him about Simone's interview. He looked confused for a second before remembering. Oh, yeah, she got it, actually. Some nonprofit marketing position. That's great. She's relieved. I wanted to ask how he knew she was relieved, whether they'd texted about it or met for celebratory drinks or simply existed in the kind of ongoing conversation that doesn't require explanation. Instead, I said, I'm happy for her. Marcus nodded, returned his attention to his laptop. The apartment grew quieter that month. Not silent. We still spoke, still moved through rooms, still performed the small maintenance of cohabitation. But the silence underneath conversation deepened, the way snow deepens sound, making everything feel farther away than it actually is. When I found the toothbrush, my first thought was that I'd bought it and forgotten. Sometimes I buy duplicates of things: shampoo, paper towels, granola bars, operating on automatic while thinking about lesson plans or parent emails. But I knew I hadn't bought this toothbrush. I knew the way you know your own reflection. I walked into the living room holding it. Marcus looked up, his expression shifting through several configurations before settling on casual curiosity. Where did this come from? I asked. He glanced at the toothbrush, then at me. Oh, Simone left it here. She crashed on the couch last night after we had drinks, too tired to go home. The explanation arrived so smoothly it felt rehearsed, which made me doubt my own suspicion, even as I felt it calcifying in my chest. She stayed over? Just on the couch. We were talking late, she had a couple glasses of wine. Didn't make sense for her to drive. He said this the way you explain something obvious to a child who's asked why the sky is blue. I looked at the toothbrush, then at the couch, which showed no evidence of having been slept on. The throw pillows remained in their careful arrangement. The blanket I kept folded over the armrest sat undisturbed. When did she leave? Early, like 6, before you woke up? I'd woken at 5:30 to use the bathroom. The apartment had been silent, undisturbed. But maybe she'd left at 5:45. Maybe I'd been in that half sleep where you hear nothing. Maybe I was being paranoid. Why did she brush her teeth here? Marcus's expression flickered. Something too quick to name. She said her mouth felt gross. I told her there were disposable ones under the sink. There were disposable toothbrushes under the sink. We kept them for guests who stayed over, though no one had stayed over in months. I nodded slowly, still holding the pale green toothbrush. I'll toss it, he said, reaching for it. I handed it to him, watched him walk to the kitchen and drop it in the trash. He returned to the couch, to his laptop, to the work that seemed to expand infinitely across his evenings. I went to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. My reflection stared back from the mirror across the room. A woman in an oversized sweater, hair pulled into a careless knot, face carrying an expression I couldn't quite read. I looked like someone waiting for something without knowing what. After the toothbrush, I began to catalog things. The way Marcus started showering as soon as he came home from work, even on days when he claimed he'd been at the office all afternoon. The faint scent in his car, something floral and expensive, nothing like the practical body spray he used. The new password on his phone, changed without explanation, discovered when I tried to check the weather during breakfast and found myself locked out. You changed your passcode, I said, handing the phone back to him. Work security thing. They made everyone update. He said this while buttering toast, not looking at me. I wanted to ask why a marketing firm would mandate personal phone security. Instead, I said, makes sense. Receipts began appearing in the laundry. I found them while doing our usual Sunday wash. Small slips of paper from restaurants I didn't recognize, bars I'd never been to, coffee shops across town. Always 2 items ordered, always paid in cash or on the card he used for work expenses, never the joint account we used for shared costs. I smoothed one receipt against the washing machine, studying it like a document that might reveal some truth if examined correctly. 2 glasses of wine, 1 appetizer plate, total $47 before tip. Dated from a Thursday 3 weeks earlier when Marcus had texted that he'd be working late. I put the receipt back in the pocket, finished the laundry, folded his jeans, and placed them in his drawer without saying anything. The silence between us became its own language. Each quiet dinner, each evening spent in separate rooms, each morning where we moved around each other with choreographed efficiency, all of it communicated something that couldn't be said directly. We were 2 people pretending the walls weren't cracking, that the foundation wasn't shifting, that love was something that could be maintained through routine alone. Simone's name appeared less frequently in conversation, which somehow made her presence feel larger. When Marcus did mention her, it was always casual, always brief, a reference to something funny she'd said, a question she'd asked him, a problem she was navigating at her new job. He spoke about her the way you speak about anyone, which is exactly what made it feel wrong. The studied neutrality, the careful lack of detail. One evening I asked him directly, "Are you sleeping with her?" We were in the kitchen. He was making tea. I was sitting at the small table we'd bought from a yard sale our first year together, the one with the wobbly leg we'd never fixed. He turned slowly, the kettle still in his hand. His face arranged itself into something like hurt surprise. "What? No, why would you ask that?" "The toothbrush. The late nights. The way you've been different." "Different how?" "Distant. Secretive." He set the kettle down, came to the table, crouched beside my chair so we were eye level. His hand found mine. "I'm not sleeping with anyone. Work's been insane, I'm stressed, and I'm sorry if I've been checked out. But there's nothing happening with Simone. She's a friend. That's it." I wanted to believe him. Believing would have been easier than the alternative, than dismantling 4 years, than acknowledging that I'd been sleeping beside someone who'd learned to lie so smoothly it sounded like comfort. "Okay," I said. He kissed my forehead, squeezed my hand, returned to making tea. I watched him move through the kitchen, opening cabinets, retrieving mugs, performing the small, domestic rituals that suggested everything was exactly as it should be. That night, I lay awake listening to him breathe beside me, wondering whether love was something you felt or something you decided to keep believing in despite all evidence to the contrary. The confrontation, when it finally came, happened without drama. I'd left school early after a staff meeting was canceled. The November light was already fading when I pulled into our apartment complex. The sky that particular shade of gray that makes everything look like a photograph from someone else's life. His car was in its usual spot. Next to it, another car I recognized, a silver sedan I'd seen once before, parked outside the coffee shop where I'd met Simone. I sat in my car for a moment, engine off, keys still in the ignition. I could have driven away, could have circled the block, given them time to finish whatever they were doing, maintained the fiction we'd been building together. Instead, I got out, climbed the 3 flights of stairs, and unlocked the door as quietly as I could. They weren't in bed, they were on the couch, not having sex, not even touching, just sitting too close, her head on his shoulder, his hand resting on her knee, the kind of casual intimacy that only exists when you're alone with someone and don't expect interruption. I stood in the doorway holding my bag, watching them watch Netflix on our TV, drinking from our mugs, occupying our space with a comfort that suggested this wasn't the first time. Marcus saw me first. His hand left her knee. She sat up, creating distance that arrived seconds too late. "Hey," he said. "You're home early." Staff meeting got canceled. Simone stood, smoothing her jeans. "I should go." "Don't," I said. "Stay. I think we should all be here for this conversation." She looked at Marcus. He looked at the floor. I walked past them to the kitchen, set my bag on the counter, and stood there with my back to them both, staring at the pale green toothbrush that had reappeared in the ceramic cup beside the sink. "How long?" I asked without turning around. The silence stretched. In it, I could hear everything. The refrigerator's hum, the distant sound of traffic, my own heartbeat counting seconds like a clock. 2 months, Marcus said finally. A little over. I turned to face them. Simone had tears on her face. Marcus looked exhausted, defeated, almost relieved. They were both sitting on the couch again, but farther apart now, the distance between them suggesting guilt rather than affection. You lied to me, I said. Not a question, a fact. I know. Every time I asked, every time I said I had a feeling, you told me I was paranoid. You told me she was just a friend. I didn't want to hurt you. The laugh that came out of me sounded foreign, bitter. You didn't want to hurt me? What the fuck do you think this is? Simone spoke then, her voice small. I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. I looked at her. This woman I'd met once for coffee, who I'd tried to like because Marcus asked me to, who'd been sleeping with my boyfriend while I graded papers and planned lessons and believed the lies he told with such practiced ease. But it did happen, I said. And you both let it keep happening. It just sort of started, Marcus said. We didn't plan it. You never do. I was crying now, though I hadn't realized it until I tasted salt. Nobody ever plans to betray someone. It just happens, like weather. I love you, he said. That hasn't changed. Don't, my voice cracked. Don't tell me you love me while she's sitting on our couch. Simone stood again. I'm leaving. Yeah, I said. You should. She grabbed her jacket from the chair, her bag from the floor. At the door, she turned back toward Marcus, some question or apology forming on her face. He shook his head once. She left. The apartment felt larger after she was gone, the way rooms feel larger when you're alone in them at night. What now? Marcus asked. I looked at him, this man I'd woken up beside for 4 years, who I'd built a life with, who I'd trusted with the small, vulnerable pieces of myself that I kept hidden from the rest of the world. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired, human in ways that made the betrayal feel both worse and somehow inevitable. I don't know, I said, but you need to leave. This is my apartment too. Then I'll leave. Wait, can we just talk about this? We are talking. I'm telling you I can't look at you right now. I'm telling you that every time I've kissed you or trusted you or made plans with you for the past 2 months, you've been lying to me. I'm telling you that I don't know if I can forgive this, but I definitely can't do it with you still here. He nodded slowly, stood, walked to the bedroom. I heard drawers opening, the rustle of clothes being gathered. 10 minutes later, he emerged with a duffel bag and his laptop case. At the door, he paused. I really am sorry. I know, I said. That's what makes it worse. The weeks after Marcus left moved with a strange slowness, each day extending like fabric pulled too thin. I'd wake to find myself alone in a bed that suddenly seemed enormous, the silence in the apartment no longer comfortable but accusatory. I went to work, taught my classes, graded papers with the same careful attention I'd always used, but everything felt distant, as if I was watching my life through glass. I removed her toothbrush from the bathroom, threw out the receipts I'd been collecting, deleted old text conversations with Marcus that I'd been scrolling through late at night, looking for signs I'd missed, evidence that I should have known. Friends called. I told them we'd broken up, kept the details vague. Some offered sympathy. Others offered anger on my behalf. Wanted to know if they should reach out to Marcus, tell him what they thought of him. I said no. What would that accomplish? He already knew what he'd done, so did I. Announcing it to everyone we knew wouldn't change the essential fact of it. I saw him once, 3 weeks after he left. We met at a coffee shop to discuss the apartment, the lease, the practical dissolution of shared life. He looked thinner, tired. There was a bruise under his left eye that he didn't explain. How have you been? He asked. How do you think? He nodded, stirred his coffee without drinking it. I know you don't believe this, but I never wanted things to end this way. How did you want them to end? He didn't have an answer for that. We divided our belongings, agreed he'd move out officially by the end of the month, signed the papers that meant I'd be keeping the apartment. The whole conversation lasted 20 minutes, 4 years reduced to logistics and legal documents. Before he left, he said, Are you still seeing her? He hesitated. Then, yes, I nodded, felt something inside me that had been holding on finally let go. I hope you're happy. I don't know if I am. Then what was the point? He didn't answer. Just picked up his coffee, walked out of the shop, disappeared into the November cold. I think about it sometimes, not the betrayal itself, but the architecture of it. How it was built through accumulation rather than decision. How each small lie created space for the next one. How love can exist alongside deception. Genuine feeling coexisting with genuine harm. I don't think Marcus is a bad person. I don't think Simone is either. I think they're human beings who wanted something and took it without fully counting the cost. The way humans have been doing since we learned to want things at all. And I don't think I'm blameless. Not because I drove him away or deserved what happened, but because I saw the signs and chose comfort over confrontation. I could have asked harder questions, could have demanded honesty when I felt it slipping away. Instead, I let us both pretend everything was fine until pretending became impossible. The apartment still smells the same, coffee in the morning, whatever I've cooked for. Dinner, the particular mustiness of old radiators coming to life in winter. His absence hasn't changed the essential character of the space, only revealed what was always true, that I can exist here alone, that I don't need someone else to make a home feel like home. I've started sleeping on his side of the bed sometimes, stretching out into territory that was once his. It doesn't feel like reclamation or revenge, it just feels like space. There are moments, washing dishes, walking home from work, waking in the dark at 3 a.m., when I feel the full weight of it. Not just what happened, but what it means. That trust, once broken, leaves cracks that never fully heal. That you can love someone and hurt them at the same time. That forgiveness isn't about pardoning someone else, but releasing yourself from the exhausting work of carrying anger. I don't know if I've forgiven him. Some days I think I have. Others I find myself rehearsing arguments I'll never have, imagining confrontations where I say the perfect cutting thing that makes him understand exactly what he destroyed. But those fantasies feel hollow now, less satisfying than simply continuing to exist without him. Last week, I bought new toothbrushes, threw out the whole ceramic cup and replaced it with a glass one that holds exactly one brush. Mine. I chose bright blue, a color Marcus would have said was too loud. It makes me smile every morning when I use it. That's what survival looks like, I think. Not dramatic transformation or triumphant moving on, but small domestic choices that slowly rebuild a life. Choosing your own toothbrush color, sleeping on both sides of the bed, learning to make coffee for one. The story doesn't end with closure because life doesn't work that way. He's still out there somewhere, presumably with her, building something new from the ruins of what we had. I'm here, alone in an apartment full of furniture we chose together, teaching students who don't know anything about my personal life, existing in the quiet aftermath of heartbreak. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the point isn't healing or forgiveness or even understanding. Maybe it's just continuing, waking up each morning, brushing your teeth with your own toothbrush, making coffee exactly how you like it, and slowly, carefully, learning to be enough for yourself. She kept both our toothbrushes next to his. I saw them there once, months later, through an Instagram post she forgot to make private, pale green and navy blue, sitting together in a ceramic cup identical to the one I'd thrown away. I stared at that photo for longer than I should have, trying to feel something sharp and definitive. But all I felt was tired. I closed the app, made dinner for one, went to bed early because I had papers to grade in the morning. Peace didn't arrive like revelation. It came slowly, disguised as exhaustion, as the simple recognition that some questions don't have answers, and some hurts don't have remedies. You just learn to carry them differently. You learn that a toothbrush is sometimes just a toothbrush, and sometimes it's evidence of a life you're no longer living. And eventually, if you're lucky, you stop checking.